Nailing focus when in front of the camera is so important for creating high quality content, and especially if it's just you trying to film yourself by yourself and you've got a camera with poor autofocus or no focus at all. So today we're going to be talking about how to get a correct focus for your camera without using autofocus. Now we all know that there are tons of cameras that are coming out that have great autofocus like Canon, Sony, or the latest Panasonic X2 at least, but there are some cameras like this old Panasonic GH5 of mine that has subpar autofocus, and then maybe there's some cameras like the Blackmagic that doesn't have any autofocus at all. And even if you have good autofocus, there are some situations where it just doesn't work. Maybe like a concert where people have their hands raised. I know the focus is like going from a person on the stage to the hands, and so you have to turn it all off. Let's roll intro. So if you're like me that had these cameras with subpar autofocus or not at all, or still just cannot bother with having to change camera brands because they produce super image qualities, or because you just can't bother with having to change lessons and all, then this video is for you. The reason I want to talk about this today is because I have been filming for over 10 years. That's a long time, 10 years. I've never once used autofocus except when I record on my cell phones, and also because the episodes I've recorded on this channel so far have been recorded without autofocus. Well, until just recently. We'll talk about that later. You're probably like myself who has a wife, and because there's also the kids and the wife has to watch the kids while you're recording, so they don't come barging in while you're recording, and you can't just bother with buying a new camera. Like I earlier said, the first thing to make sure your camera with poor autofocus has and should turn on is focus peaking. Focus peaking is essential, and what it does is it gives you an outline to your subject or whatever is in focus. Sometimes it's green, blue, white, or red. You can basically change it to any color you want if your camera allows. It allows you to get the focus as quickly as possible and by just glancing at it. So as you can see, if you're focusing here, the background is in focus. You can see that it's green and then a subject is in focus because it has that green outline. If I were to pull the focus to the object closer to the camera, you can see that the object closer to the camera, which is now in focus, now has the focus peaking because it is now in focus. So as you can see, the focus peaking helps us so much by allowing you to quickly see what's in focus and what is not in focus. Now, if for some reason your camera has no focus peaking, which would mean you are using a very outdated camera and hopefully it has HDMI out, then the next thing you would need is an external portable monitor. You can spend some money on a cheap portable monitor of maybe 5 inches to 7 inches that has focus peaking, and all you need to do is activate the focus peaking and that should solve your problem. So for me, since the GH5 has a small LCD screen that can be flipped out, I may not see properly what's in focus, or the Blackmagic cameras whose screens don't flip out at all. This is the LH5P Portkeys monitor, a super bright 1500 nit monitor, and I've had this for a few years now. After using the Anderson A5, I think for a while, and I will place this monitor clamped to my desk with this clamp using an articulating arm. If I were not filming from my desk position, I would have just had this monitor on a light stand to maybe my right or left of the camera. This is useful to have as I can check to make sure I am in focus and also framed properly. The next thing I will do is turn on the camera display settings I see on my camera's LCD onto my external monitor. This is super helpful that apart from the fact that I can see that I am in focus or that I am framed properly, I can also see if the camera is still recording, if I'm almost out of memory or that my settings are right. You can turn this feature on by going into your camera's HDMI output settings and then turning it on. So I have focus peaking turned on and a portable monitor to see myself. I have also turned on the HDMI output display to see that I'm on my portable monitor and check to see that my settings are dialed perfectly as I would like them to be. Next is dialing the autofocus, and there are two ways I achieve this. On my GH5, I'll place an item right on the spot I know I would be. And this can be anything as I do not have a mannequin. This would be a bit of trial and error as this would take a bit of time to get it right, or at least have my eyes perfectly in focus. Once I'm satisfied, I will hit the record button and then return to my seat to begin recording while making sure I'm not moving a lot so as not to be out of the focus range. This was a pain until I switched to the Blackmagic camera and got the Blackmagic remote app that controls the Blackmagic camera via Bluetooth. This is not a free app. I used the one called Blue Connect that I got off the Apple App Store for a couple dollars. Although there's others like the Blue Plus for Blackmagic and Blackmagic's own Blackmagic camera control app. I found out that the Blue Connect and Blue 2 Plus for Blackmagic offer more controls than the native one for Blackmagic does. I will drop a link in the description to these apps, and I think the last time I checked they are only available on the iOS store. I do think there is an Android version which I will leave in the description as well, but I think the iOS versions are a lot more stable from my own experience and also easier to use. Now, the reason I use the mobile apps on my iPhone or iPad is that I can easily operate the camera without having to stand up all the time. With the Blackmagic cameras and these apps, I can easily control my camera. I can change resolution settings, audio levels, start and stop recording, activate and deactivate the false color settings on the camera, and most importantly, adjust my focus point without having to leave my sitting position. So if you haven't gotten these apps, don't forget to head down in the description section for a link to them. And trust me, it's worth it. This has saved me time while filming. All I have to do is just adjust my focus while I'm just looking at my monitor to make sure I've nailed it correctly. But it also is important to note that this will work if and only if you have a lens with autofocus. This will not work if you're filming on a manual lens, so remember that, because then again, the camera will not be able to talk to the lens. If you want to spend a little bit of extra money, DJI actually has an infrared autofocusing system that goes on the outside of the camera and communicates with the focus motor on the DJI Ronin S. So you basically calibrate it for distance, and then whatever this infrared sees, it will then tell the focus motor to focus on that distance. So basically, whatever is directly in front of it, that's what it's going to focus on. It has some downsides though. For instance, if you're trying to focus on things that are very close to the camera or very far away, it kind of jumps around and it's trying to figure out what you're looking at. But just recently, Panasonic joined forces with DJI to release a new autofocus system, and you can watch all about it on Sam Holland's YouTube channel. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can see how this incredible new tech works. So that's it guys for how I've been recording myself without a camera with superb autofocus. Until I decide to get this camera I'm using to record this episode with. More info on this in another video. So if you haven't subscribed, please do, and leave a like if you haven't so you don't miss my next video on why I got this new camera. See you in the next one.